Question. There's also really a question in the communications area. It's from Jack Yang, I beg your pardon.
Thanks, Tony. Mr. Turnbull and Ms. Albrechtsen, when other countries are pouring large amount of money into their international broadcast operations, ABC has been in a lot of speculation in the past couple of weeks of its future fundings. So let's look at the numbers. The Australian network operated by ABC is now relayed through 679 rebroadcasters in the region, reaching 131 million people. ABC's partnerships have extended its digital reach by 109% in the past 6 months. One of the examples is ABC's English learning community has got 900,000 followers when BBC got about 498,000 and Voice of America got 662,000. So Janet and Malcolm, if you think ABC is not doing the job precisely and quietly fulfilling its brief about its responsibility, why do media partners across the Indo-Pacific Ocean stand up to the network again and again?
Now, I should say we did check to make sure that Jack does not work for the Australian network or the ABC. It has to be said. He just came to us straight. So, Janet Albrechtsen.
I guess I'm one of those people who have watched the Australian network many times overseas, and I'm not quite sure what it's trying to do. I understand what the contract with the ABC is, and we've heard from Mark Scott on taking soft diplomacy into Asia. I really believe that the Department of Foreign Affairs could do a much better job. I don't see that the Australian network you talk about the reach that it has. It's got a tiny audience. It's basically expats watching the Australian network. It's 220 million over 10 years. I reckon DFAT could do a whole lot better in pursuing soft diplomacy in Asia. I think when I look at what's happening in America...
Do you think all those, 900,000 expats are learning to speak English?
No. I think they're watching. They're watching what I think. The only reason they watch Australian network is so they can watch a bit of footy occasionally.
What's wrong with that?
Nothing is wrong with that. I don't want to subsidise that, Dave. Again, you probably want to subsidise it. I don't want to subsidise it, right? So, and I think it's a problem not just for the ABC, by the way. I think it's a problem for any news outlet in Australia. There is a conflict between being a independent news outlet and all that entails, and then running a channel in Asia with the aim of pursuing soft diplomacy. I think that's an inherent conflict. And even Alexander Downer, you don't often hear politicians say they got it wrong. He admitted about a week ago that Cabinet were pretty iffy about this. John Howard was certainly iffy about it. He took it into Cabinet, he pushed it, they agreed, and he said, I got it wrong. It wasn't the right thing to do.
OK, let's hear from the Communications Minister. Do you think it'll be shut down? I mean, in the newspaper the other day, you were suggesting putting ABC 24, which is purely domestic output, onto that international transmission line. Of course, that would make it rather difficult to keep those partnerships.
No, well, that's not what I was suggesting, actually. Look, whether
you were misquoted by the Australian.
This is the point I was making. Firstly,
because Barnaby Joyce was on the show last week making the same claim.
Whether this I think you misread it. Whether this $27 million a year is good value for the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade is a decision for Julie Bishop, not for me. Right? I'm the minister responsible ultimately for the ABC, but it's not my decision about spending that money. However, I think the point, Mr. Yang, that I'd make to you, is that the internet itself has trumped all these other platforms. The reality is that if you want to get your Australian news, your Australian message out to the greatest number of people, it should be streamed over the internet and available on the internet. That is the most pervasive platform. It is the hyper platform. It has trumped everything else.
That's going to kill our global data roaming charges.
That is why Bruce Dover, who used to run Australian network some years ago, has made exactly the same point, that if you wanted to have an Australian, say ABC News 24 available globally, then spend a bit of money to clear, so there are some copyright issues, clear those issues, and then it can just stream over the internet globally as it does within Australia. And that would mean that anywhere in the world, anyone with a smartphone would be able to, or internet-connected television or computer, would be able to see what is happening in Australia, according to ABC News 24, at any time. Now, I think that is a very, very powerful argument. I think you can do so much more
with the
internet.
Can I interrupt you? Is it? Yeah. Have you concluded that there is here waste? That this money is actually wasted? I mean, it's 225 million or so over 10 years. Is it your conclusion that that is a place where waste can be cut out of the budget? Because that's the implication, and that's obviously what the Australian is saying in their editorials, etc. So is that your view?
No, my view is that ultimately, as to whether that $27 million a year is a good investment on soft diplomacy, is a decision for Julie Bishop and the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. But if you're asking me, as someone who's been around communications for a while and has got an interest in it, both professional and historical, I would say that if I wanted to get the message of the ABC to the widest possible global audience, and ABC News to the widest global possible audience, I would be streaming it and making it available over the internet globally as we do in Australia.
Except for Tasmania, then you'd have trouble there.
Okay, I'm told I'm going to cut you off there because I'm told we've got time for one last question.